So I'm Liese Zahabi. I'm faculty at the University of Maryland in the art department, and I was asked to organize the symposium, the student symposium, by Ben Schneiderman, who organized the full colloquium. And I've worked with him on some other projects, and he knows that I sort of sit at the intersection of art and design and some science and computing, and so he thought I would be a good person to do that work. He actually had a really beautiful vision. He himself thinks of the work that he's done in the past in terms of this weird hybrid space that doesn't necessarily belong in one place or another. And what he really wanted to do with the symposium was create a space for students who also sit in that same sort of space so that they could come together and see that there are other students doing work like them. He really wanted to foster a sense of connection and networking, and so Morin, my collaborator, and I really worked hard to create an event for that day that would do that. So the students could spend all their time together in the same space, learn about each other's work, and then have that chance to have discussions with each other. So we wrote a call collaboratively, and then ran it by the rest of the organizing committee, and then we pushed it out to all sorts of different kinds of organizations. So Molly and I really focused on art and design because that's where our expert networks are, and then Ben Schneiderman and the rest of the organizing committee pushed it out to engineering organizations and computing organizations and science organizations, and they really sent it out very widely. We also tried to specifically send out to programs we thought would be an interesting fit that do work in that hybrid space, so MIT, Carnegie Mellon, some of the other schools at Stanford, and so we really tried to think of places, but we did push it out, and it was very important to Molly and I to create as inclusive and diverse a group of students as possible. And so we really wanted to get students from programs you wouldn't necessarily think about doing this kind of work. So for instance, we have an MFA candidate coming from Ohio State, and we had another candidate doing work at the University of Iowa, not places you normally think of in terms of this hybrid space. So that was really a big push for us. And I think we received about 200 submissions, which was really exciting. And we were limited in terms of how many we wanted to select by the funding that was secured, because part of the selection process was that these students got stipends so that they could travel to the conference and have a little bit of support. So we were limited by the amount of funding that we had, and Ben decided that we should have about 54 students, which meant we could have 17 students coming from one geographic region, 17 from another, and then 20 that were more local. And so that's sort of how the numbers worked out. And we did have a few students who at the last minute couldn't make it. I think we had right around 50 who ended up attending the conference. So we had a committee of 5. We had a neuroscientist, a computer scientist, and then 3 of us who work in art and design with science mixed in. And we read every single abstract. They were 150-word abstracts. We read every single one, and then the criteria that we looked at were how well did the student sort of address this call for being a hybrid sort of practice, looking at the integration of these two worlds. What was the quality, the overall just general quality of the abstract, and then also, I forget what the third. And it's how innovative was it? Had we seen this idea before, or was it something that really was more transformational or just more interesting, more innovative? So we gave those criteria to all of the committee members, and then we aggregated all of those ranking results together, and then also made some decisions to make sure that we had that inclusivity, that the most programs possible were represented with the quality of the ranking results. I think what I learned was something that Ben Schneiderman was also hoping, that there really is a lot of interesting, incredibly interesting work being done, and that I think students who aren't in an industry where they're limited by funding in the same way that they probably will be later, and the ones that I think are working in even smaller programs and aren't limited by having to do specific kinds of research for a specific kind of PI investigator. I think they're just doing really interesting and innovative things. And I really saw within all of those student projects that idea of integration. And they're not necessarily thinking of it in terms of I'm an artist doing science or I'm a scientist doing art. I think they really do see it as another thing, a third thing, or just something that wholly is about those aspects. Another big takeaway was just this general thread of care and inclusivity and thinking about people and being ethical. I think that was a really beautiful thread that ran through a lot of the talks that the students gave, and I was very encouraged to hear that message. One thing that I know I've taken away is that now all of a sudden I think I have 48 potential new collaborators that I could sort of tap into their networks as well. And just that I think the way that the Academy sort of silos us, events like this help to really make those connections. And I think with all of the people that were in the room on Monday, everyone really just wants to have those conversations together. So in terms of my own work, I'm just kind of seeing that more is possible. Just it gives me a lot of hope.